morning. Welcome to the No Way Jose podcast. This is the morning dump. It's Tuesday, July 14th. I'm your host, Jose Galison, and this is the kitty of the day, Mr. Gizmo. He's one of two kitties we have left that are ready to go to back to their homes of these older kitties. I'll show you the other one we have left tomorrow. It's Gizmo and Kittler that we got left. He'll be going to his new home this weekend, and we will miss him. He is a sweet boy, as you can tell by how cuddly he is here. You might even be able to hear him purring. Now, for those who like seeing my hot takes, typically around Monday through Friday, around 11 a.m. Eastern, hey, we've been pretty bad about the days past week, but hey, we've had some kitty stuff going on, and hey, I have life. It is what it is. We try to make it Monday through Friday. We'll see when we can, and we shoot for around 11 a.m. Eastern. We made it 11 today. Or if you just like seeing the kitty of the day, then be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications. That way you can see when we're dropping new videos and when we're going live. With that, we'll see you in the show.
Beautiful thing, right now.
Rise and shine, it's a beautiful day. I am alright.
About a third of the building has been blown away.
This is the bridge to white lights.
Our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts.
And at that point, we were taken for another round of questioning, this time related to our allegedly being members of Mossad.
Crazy evil.
Good morning, everyone. Hope you guys had a good weekend. Sorry I missed you guys Friday and Monday. Just, odds and ends. I had everything all set up, ready to go yesterday. It was going to probably be a late one, but just whatever. Run around. This kid needs to go that place. That kid needs to go this place. It just wasn't in the works yesterday. So we have more than enough to talk about today, but we're going to try to keep it limited to talking about, as we always do, we start off our show with icebreaker content, the fun, the funny, the gem pop, the sort of slop. And today it's gone elevated to a titled segment that the normal icebreaker content will be taken over by the Lindsey Graham Dead segment we have today. Because, hey, what's more fun than that, right? Although, I'll be honest, I'm going to miss the guy a little bit. So we'll talk about all that, and then we'll get into the foreign policy coverage of the show, which, I don't know, might be a little bit hefty. There quite a bit happened over the weekend and, Friday and Monday, so have a little bit of catch up to do there. And then we will get into the next titled segment of the day, MKULTRA hearings / programmed to Chickenhawk, connecting those MKULTRA hearings that they had recently, kind of just giving you the down and dirty of what happened there. We'll be kind of going through it ourselves, figuring out what happened there. And then I'll kind of thread you guys along to kind of connect the MKUltra to the through line between that and like program to kill, like, program like Manchurian candidates and then kind of pedo rings and the like. And we'll make it all make sense by the end. We'll connect all those dots and make you a master pattern recognizer in relation to that whole thing. Like I said, we have a ton to talk about. I still need to do some, I have like multiple segments already set up for throughout the week, because there's just too much. We got to touch back again, probably tomorrow, maybe on the Tyler Robinson stuff. I think tonight we'll probably talk about that. Me and Austin probably talk a little bit about the Tyler Robinson stuff. But I definitely need to touch base on that one in the morning dump in an info dump format style. We need to do that tomorrow, probably. There's plenty more. Hell, when I covered it the other day, I was not expecting. I kind of covered the theory that essentially Ben Shapiro was like looped in or whatever, and he was whatever. We covered that, and I did not at all anticipate that was going to blow up even further. So we definitely got to touch base on that. Got to check in on that. See essentially it's become a Tim Pool versus Clint Russell thing. And if you saw my coverage over the past week, I funny enough, I kind of fall on a weird side of the issue here, if that makes sense. Although I wouldn't say I'm on nobody's side. I'm my own side, kind of like a wizard. I take the third path. But yeah, we have plenty to talk about today. Before we get into it, I do like to give a quick reminder what the show is. Just super quick. Try to keep it as quick as possible. If it's not your cup of tea, whatever, move on. But this is an info dump format, is what we call it. This is a live show, just kind of bookmarks, articles, and we're kind of mostly trudging through this stuff together. Sometimes it's stuff that I've already processed before. It's information I've processed. For example, like the program to Chickenhawk side of the stuff. It's stuff I'm pretty familiar with, but like the MKULTRA hearing side of that segment will be like we'll be trudging new ground together, figuring out what the hell happened at this MKULTRA hearing. And I do, if you're not here for the live experience, I do recommend you do try to show up for the live experience, hit the bell, all that good stuff. That way you can catch us live. I do think it's fun to do it that way. But if you aren't here for the live experience, I do leave timestamps to make it easy for everybody that we can jump around from segment to segment, and you can avoid the chat banter that I keep towards the end of each segment to make it easy for you to avoid, because who wants to get that on the listen back? Now, if you are here for the live stream, I do like to remind you guys, I try to give everyone at least one good morning. After that, you got to catch my interest or catch my wallet. Luckily, my interest is that of a squirrel's. But if you do want to pick the wallet option, you can super chat over here on YouTube. I believe I still have that option. They haven't taken that away yet, so use it while you can. Although you can always just support the show and become a regular supporter. I feel like I have a pretty close group there. I know who most of my supporters are, and then I'll just kind of recognize you more in the chat anyways. And there's also other perks you'll get over there too. Over the top left-hand corner, you got that QR code, patreon.com/NoWayJose2020. But with that, let's go ahead and get into the first segment of the day. Let's get some icebreaker content. Let's talk about Lindsey Graham, what exactly is going on there. Usually, we start the show off with a little more goofy sort of stuff, but this is, I guess, in my own sort of way, I guess it is goofy, and it does take some goofy angles here. For example, apparently the official narrative here, by the way, back up, I guess I already kind of said it, but for those who are living under a rock, Lindsey Graham's dead. Lindsey Graham died over the weekend, and there is some intrigue as to what the fuck actually really happened there that we will be getting into. But yes, Lindsey Graham died over the weekend. Basically, the big theory is that perhaps he was actually killed by Russia. The official narrative is he had some sort of variation of a heart attack. But here's a piece Dave DeCamp wrote up over at antiwar.com, which is what we usually source for all of our foreign policy content here. So Ukrainian President Zelensky on Sunday published a post the next morning. Lindsey Graham, who died at 71 on Saturday night, just one day after meetings with Zelensky in the Ukrainian capital of Kiev. Graham was one of Washington's leading supporters of the proxy war in Ukraine, and according to Zelensky, he had visited the country 10 times since Russia invaded in February 2022. During his last visit to Kiev, Graham announced that the White House had reached a deal with Congress to move forward with a new bill on Russian sanctions and said he would work on it when he returned home. He also visited a Ukrainian drone manufacturing plant operated by the Ukrainian firm Skyfall, which isn't that some weird dystopian movie? Maybe I'm remembering that wrong. Which comes as Ukrainian forces continue to fire hundreds of drones into Russia each day, operations supported by U.S. intelligence. I believe it would be a huge mistake for America not to cooperate with Ukraine in the field of drones. They are ready to help us because we are ready to support Ukraine in the hardest times, Graham said, according to the Kiev Post. Today, I visited a state-of-the-art enterprise that has huge capacities and produces technologies far more advanced than anyone on the planet. After all, necessity is the mother of all inventions, he added. Graham's support for Ukraine against Russia goes back many years, well before Russia invaded in February 2022. I mean, anyone knows Graham knows he was kind of the war homo extraordinaire. At the end of 2016, Graham, his late friend Senator John McCain, and Senator Amy Klobuchar visited Ukrainian Marines in the front lines of the Donbass war and urged them to go on the offense despite the Minsk Accords agreement meant to end the conflict. Your fight is our fight, Graham told the soldiers. On December 21st, 2017 will be year of offense. All of us will go back to Washington and we will push the case against Russia. Enough of Russian aggression. It is time for them to pay a heavier price. Our fight is not with the Russian people, but with Putin. Our promise to you is to take your cause to Washington, inform the American people of your bravery, and make the case against Putin to the world. Following the Russian invasion in 2022, Graham supported each escalation of U.S. involvement in the proxy war and called several times for the assassination of Putin. Graham was also known to revel in the death of Russians and called for the U.S. military aid to Ukraine, the best money we ever spent. Trump spoke with Graham after he returned from Ukraine on Sunday, obviously allegedly, just hours before his death. The president said that Graham had a great trip to Ukraine and seemed fine other than being tired. Graham's office said that a preliminary medical examination found that he died due to an aortic dissection. Here is a little video from Larry Johnson, which is an ex-CIA guy, and I don't really know a ton about him. I see him every now and then, especially at some of the foreign policy guys' shows out there. He is entertaining. I don't really know. I do think he tends to speak in a way that's not very much like trust me bro-ish, but I don't know. I generally have a fairly positive view of this guy. So I feel like you have to say this anytime we talk about a CIA guy, because you're like, is he some sort of, once CIA, always CIA? Would I be surprised? No, but either way, here he is. So he's just here he is saying essentially that Lindsey Graham could not have died at home. So some ex-CIA guy, Larry Johnson. Let's hear him out. Hear what he has to say. Why you think it was impossible, essentially, because for those who aren't aware, didn't catch the detail there. Essentially, it was like the day before. Literally, he was in Ukraine, essentially at one of their drone factories that I believe they said they got hit in that piece. I already exited out of it, so I can't double check. But I believe they said that that factory actually got hit. So. The idea, a lot of people are like, well, it's like the day, a day later, the place gets hit that Lindsey Graham's at, and now he's dead. It's like, it kind of looks like, did he really leave? But either way, here, Larry Johnson is. Let's hear what he has to say.
Get through on the timeline. If everything's normal, he arrives normally in Kyiv, because that's how they do it. In fact, the United States pre-coordinates with Russia. So they don't attack the trains. And Russia in the past has not attacked those trains. So he arrives in Kyiv, he meets with Zelensky. At some point, there's video footage of him going through this drone factory, and he's holding up one of the drones, smiling, because it's, it's sort of shaped like a dildo. So that he may have had some other thoughts going through his mind with respect to the drone. But let's say, for whatever reason, it was urgent, so that he had to get back. Unless you're being medically evacuated, they're not going to bring in a military aircraft to haul you out of there on a normal visit. And so it was either he went the normal route on the train back to Poland, which is at least a 10-hour ride, maybe a little longer. Then you catch a plane, and the plane coming back to the United States is at least 10 hours. Bigger headwinds could make it 11. So that's the normal route. And I'm saying if he just did a normal, this quick in and out, he still got home after the time that he supposedly died at home. So it's sort of tough to die at home when you're not at home. So we're not sure what happened. All I can tell you is the story that's been put out by the U.S. government is a lie. That much we know.
All right, so we got this ex-spook saying it looks like there's no way in fuck he died here at home, considering where he supposedly was the day before. I don't know. I guess we can somewhat take his word for it, so take that for what you can. But we also got some of the big dogs out in the world giving him some love, Netanyahu namely being one of them. He recounted his last conversation with Lindsey Graham, and it's kind of giving off Charlie Kirk vibes, and I don't mean in the Lindsey Graham was turning on Netanyahu in the end. Definitely not. Please don't start that one, although that would be a fun That would be a fun one to go down. I'm not gonna lie. But it's you'll see. We're gonna go through here what Netanyahu talked about in essentially his final thoughts on Lindsey Graham. And my point being is that he's still trying to get some sort of political W out of this. Like, so he can't just have that's awful. Me and him had many fond moments together, and I mourn his loss, and I'm thinking of his family in this time. These sort of things. No, of course it has to be, obviously that plus whatever. You got to get a thing in there. You got to thing. What is the thing? And up to and including in his final moments, he was saying, so you got to find what's the political thing that you're trying to push, and then we got to find an angle to get Lindsey Graham, the death of your so-called friend, to push that thing. So you'll see what I mean here. Netanyahu on Sunday recounted what he said was his last conversation with Lindsey Graham, the notoriously hawkish South Carolina senator who died on Saturday night due to a brief and sudden illness, according to a statement from his office, although now we know they're going with aortic dissection. Netanyahu said during an appearance on Fox News the two discussed the Israeli prime minister's idea to reduce U.S. military aid over a number of years as part of a plan to further merge the U.S. and Israeli militaries. Netanyahu claimed Graham opposed the idea of eventually ending U.S. military aid, which I know this requires you kind of understand this whole aid thing. We've talked about this before. We're going to take a little bit of a detour digging into it, but essentially the idea here is it's the new move of the Israeli government is to move from aid to partnership. That's the way they're marketing it. And so now instead of the idea is to pull back on a financial aid or explicit military aid that it's given, like arms sales and stuff from the U.S. to Israel, and shifting that to mergers, like military mergers of sorts. So essentially, hey, now we're partners. And so the idea is that, you're not explicitly getting the aid, but you're still getting the benefits. And so now instead of being the idea from their perspective is now you're getting the benefits from us too. So it goes both ways. So it's a partnership as opposed to a parasitic relationship is the way they're trying to sell it. But now he's obviously saying, well, before Graham died, he's going, whoa. Well, we can move to partnership, but we don't want to drop the aid. That would be insane. So as Netanyahu said, he went ballistic. He said, no way, you can't do that, because he was so concerned with our security, which he believed was your security, that he actually fought the prime minister of Israel on keeping America's aid or actually increasing it. And that tells you what kind of a person this extraordinary friend was. Although I will say it's believable, but I mean, it's completely believable Lindsey would say that, but I don't necessarily believe he did, because it just seems like Lindsey, because I think Lindsey's already been on programs pushing this new thing. So whatever. It just seems like political posturing to me. Despite Netanyahu's claim, Graham was on the record publicly supporting the idea and said it should be done more quickly than the 10-year timeline the Israeli leader suggested. I will always appreciate allies who are trying to be more self-sufficient and believe that, given what the prime minister said, we need not wait 10 years, Graham wrote on X in January. The billions in taxpayer dollars that would be saved by expediting the termination of military aid to Israel will and should be plowed back into the U.S. military, which is best in the world and in great demand, Graham added. Netanyahu and Graham spoke at least twice since the post, and as Graham visited Israel later that month and spoke with Israeli leader by phone in March 2026. During his appearance on Fox, Netanyahu was asked about his plan to merge, which is being advanced by members of Congress via an amendment of the NDAA that would integrate the two militaries without reducing U.S. military aid. I'm calling it from aid to partnership, Netanyahu said. I'm thinking the meshing of our two great countries of talent would strengthen America's competitive position. I actually have one of these clips of him on Fox News. Let's watch this. Here, Netanyahu talking about this move from aid to partnership.
Mr. Prime Minister, do you have a timeline by which you would like to see that U.S. foreign aid down to zero?
Yes. It's military aid, actually. We were talking about beginning it this year, going for 10 years, but we might shorten it. And that was something, by the way, that I did when I was first elected and came to Congress. We had financial, not military support, but financial aid to Israel. And I said on my first speech before the joint session of Congress that we're going to bring it down to zero. And we did that in 10 years. Every year went down until it finally disappeared. We could talk about that model. We're talking about that with the administration right now.
Well, Prime Minister, will that drawing down of foreign aid from the United States to Israel be compensated by the proposal to have a merging of some sort between our Pentagon and your military?
Yeah, I'm calling it from aid to partnership. So we take away the money that is given to Israel, which is one part. But the other part is we co-invest in equal measures in the new technologies that are needed to give our military and your military the advantage. So there are some unbelievable projects. So we invest jointly and take the fruits equally. You move from aid to partnership, and I think that represents what Israel is. And remember, the other thing is that we share with America unbelievable intelligence to save American life. General Keegan has said that when he was working in American intelligence, what Israel was giving the United States was worth, he said, 5 CIAs. Now, I'm not trying to be mathematically exact, but Israel's contributions to America's defense are important. Our technology is incredible. And since yours is incredible too, and you're the great champion of liberty and free markets, I think the meshing of our two great countries of talent would strengthen America's position, competitive position, both in the economic marketplace and in the military battlefield in many important ways. So that's the idea. The idea is to take away aid, one-sided aid, and move it into bilateral investments for common benefit.
It certainly brings up some issues of sovereignty, but we'll have to work that out later. Thank you so much, Prime Minister. We appreciate.
Good on her. I don't really know who the hell it is. I will say good on her for that tiny little dig there in the end. I don't know. Maybe she just felt like she's doing due diligence, but it felt like a little bit of a barb in there at the end. The most you can really get away with on Fox News pushing back against Bibi Netanyahu. But let's pop back into Lindsey Graham. I just wanted to kind of remind you guys about that this is going on, and that essentially the death of Lindsey Graham was used to essentially try to essentially usher this in all the easier for the powers that be here. So. But let's move on past that. Let's check back in on the Lindsey Graham story. This is one other interesting little wrinkle in it. Here is Nick Sorter, one of these, slop vendors. But here's a post. He says, just in, nearly 20 federal agents from various agencies, including the FBI, have been spotted at Lindsey Graham's home in D.C. today, per NBC. He said agents are there out of an abundance of caution, and there is no new evidence has arisen since his death on Saturday night to indicate foul play, law enforcement sources tell NBC. As our boy Clinton here says, he died of a heart attack. This is 20 FBI agents fled his property. Oh, okay, then Russia killed him. Although, let's be real, that doesn't necessarily. I lean towards that, yes. But there could be other options. I saw some pretty funny replies in there. People saying like, "Hey, it's the FBI in there." Someone heard the kids screaming in the basement or something. They're taking care of it before it gets messy. There's other alternate theories. He's gone, so what do we do now? We got to cover up the evidence, and you really got to lock that evidence down like real quick, because you can't be letting that get out, because we got to get the next person in there. And they found the one person that compromat we were just talking about, the children in the basement probably. We found the one person that would also work on. So they didn't even have to get a new blackmail file. They didn't have to work from scratch. Apparently what's going on here is they're going to be appointing the sister, or they're appointing Henry McMaster, the governor of South Carolina, has already appointed, I guess, Darlene Graham Nordone, the sister of Lindsey Graham. So here, let's check this out. Here is him. Give me a second. We gotta take it down and bring it back up, because of course StreamYard's being glitchy. But here is Lindsey Graham's sister being appointed Graham's job, essentially. So here is the governor doing just that.
Today, under the law, it's my duty and honor to name someone to serve in the place of this irresistible man, this irreplaceable man, this extraordinary man for the remainder of his term. Lindsey took care of his little sister in years long departed. It's my honor to ask his little sister, Darlene Graham, to finish his work for him now.
So you see his sister over there left. Not gonna lie, a little bit of a gilf. 61, looking dope. So now I'm kind of feeling. I mean, I saw the news of Lindsey Graham gone, and like, in the morning, what was it? Sunday morning, I think, and kind of like, whoa, you kind of like a little pep in the step. You're like, oh, what? Lindsey Graham's? Oh, that's nice. And then you can start thinking about it. You're like, he was fun, like an effeminate, southern leprechaun, just this weird, just loves war. It's debatably more than cock. Like he's endearing in his own weird, bizarre way. And he was actually pretty effective as a politician, surprisingly, for what he wanted. So obviously with him gone, but on the flip side, they're bringing in boobs. There's boobs now. So I'm a little bit concerned. I haven't seen her talk or do anything. She just has that appearance. So, like, if she's effective at this could be a problem. Lindsey Graham with boobs could be a real issue. If that gets weaponized and used properly, you don't know where that could go. So just keep an eye out for that. But essentially, it's fine. It seems funny to me. They don't even have to get a new blackmail folder. Just let his sister finish it out. But here she is. But checking in on other of the political elite that may or may not be alive. Apparently, Mitch McConnell's basically been absent recently. And there was a little bit of a small moment where this is about a week or so ago, to give you an idea on the timetable, and he's already been essentially missing for like weeks. But there became this whole viral trend that multiple people were like essentially claiming they spoke to McConnell. For example, there's Thomas Massey saying, I spoke to McConnell for about 20 minutes this morning. He said we should end the war with Iran, quit giving aid to Israel, stop spying on Americans with the war. And he's really sorry about how my primary turned out. You wouldn't believe it, but McConnell did not come out to say this is a lie or any of the other many viral posts claiming what McConnell had said to them. But this all started because I believe there's a couple political actors out there, very specific political actors, that essentially were claiming they had spoken to McConnell, but then they couldn't provide any sort of proof whatsoever. And they weren't able to, in any way, shape, or form, like they weren't able to get anybody else to listen or anything. And the funny thing is, they actually seemed, I saw one of the videos, I was looking for this morning, I couldn't find it, but one of the guys actually seemed like he believed it too. So I'm like, I know it sounds absurd, but I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if one of McConnell's people was perhaps like cold calling people, I don't know whether it's AI voice changers or what, pretending to be McConnell for this very purpose. That way there are people who can legitimately go and claim, oh, I spoke to McConnell. But either way, there was people claiming they spoke to McConnell. It was like comical too, because it's like, well, why can't he speak to, I don't know, anybody who's not like directly connected to him or just not random ass? Why can't he give anybody, like maybe his opponents or a reporter or a video or something that could be put out there to the world, proof of life essentially, because McConnell has been gone long enough that many people are going, what the fuck is up with this guy? What is going on? He's just not showing up. And this was in the aftermath. There was this other politician not too long ago who just recently just stopped showing up for, I don't know how long it was, something ridiculous. I think it was months. And then eventually enough people complained, and then come to find out he's like, yeah, I was depressed. What? I guess this is the thing you can do as a politician. You can just not show up. You can just basically not exist. Just claim you have some sort of vague medical stuff and people leave you alone. Probably not good for your re-election outlook, I would imagine. But hey, whatever. If you're not concerned about that, I guess you can just kind of phone it in. By the way, McConnell, though, we did end up getting, I guess, something in the realm of what one could say proof of life. We ended up getting this long statement and a photo, which many people have pointed I don't have a strong opinion on whether it's AI or not, but many people have pointed out that this is perhaps AI. Here's a picture of Mitch McConnell. This is his wife next to him, which she's like, I believe, like the daughter of like some Taiwanese like billionaire or something crazy. So very suspicious. And she essentially just bailed on him, I guess, 2 days after he supposedly had a semi-major medical event. Because this is another thing, another weird thing here is like even his wife couldn't confirm that he was alive during all of this because she was in China, which we're going to have to one of these days maybe look at Mitch McConnell's wife because there's something weird going on there. Definitely glows very, very hard. But essentially put out this photo, picture of him in like a hospital chair of sort, his wife next to him holding his arm. You can even see in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a newspaper, which many people have pointed out, like how convenient is it. That was like literally the one from like that day. I forget which specific paper it was supposed to be, but I've seen people point out which paper it is. And then he put out this statement. It says, to my fellow Kentuckians, when you elected me to a 7th term and made me our Commonwealth's longest-serving senator, you did so trusting that I'd keep showing up to fight for you every day. And over the past several weeks, Elaine and I have appreciated both your well wishes and your honest questions about what was keeping me away from the Senate. You all know how folks in my generation often hesitate to share the vulnerability that comes with growing older. Even in the public eye, I feel that same instinct. I can't help it. At the same time, I've had more than my fair share of experience with physical vulnerabilities. Surviving childhood polio meant spending my entire life with mobility challenges, which just feels like very like Joe Biden coded, like the idea of like, I had a stutter growing up, and that's why I'm fucking retarded right now. They haven't exactly gone easier to manage with age, and last month I took a fall which landed me in the hospital. My doctors have confirmed that I didn't break any bones or suffer concussion. So this is where we're getting what the supposed stories. He took a fall, he landed in the hospital. Now he's saying my doctors have confirmed that I didn't break any bones or suffer concussion. So no broken bones, allegedly, no concussion. I didn't have a heart attack or stroke, so no heart attack, no stroke. I don't have any tumors or any hemorrhages, so nothing like hemorrhage, blood. Old people are very fragile at that age. Falls will kill them, or can. I was briefly unconscious and was taken to the hospital. While receiving excellent care for the past several weeks, I've also had to deal with a mild case of pneumonia. So I guess he got pneumonia, so maybe that can give a little explanatory power here. I can assure you that I've been a good patient at my age. I tend to do what the doctors tell me to do. I've submitted to every test they can think of to help figure out what caused this incident, and I'm continuing to do everything they ask to speed my recovery. In fact, with signs of continued progress, I've been able to move from hospital care to rehab center where I'll begin regaining my strength. Much as it frustrates me, this process takes time. On the advice of my doctors, I won't be able to return to the Senate floor to vote quite yet. But rest assured that in the meantime, I'm not taking a break from the Senate business that matters to you. I've been working closely with my legislative staff on current issues and with my Kentucky team who help provide timely constituent services across our Commonwealth. I've also been keeping in touch with my Senate colleagues in the appropriations process, midterm politics, and everything in between. You're right to expect your representatives to work hard for you, and part of my decision to retire at the end of my term this coming January has been honest about the demands of Senate work. But I still have unfinished business to complete on your behalf, and I have every intention of finishing the job you elected me to do. I'll keep working hard to get back on the Senate floor as soon as possible, and I'll keep you posted on the progress of my recovery. Until then, I'm so grateful for your wishes, for prayers and well wishes. From the office of the attending physician here, it says Senator McConnell has experienced several falls throughout the year that have been attributed to his post-polio condition. Okay, he was admitted to the hospital 4 weeks ago after falling at home and sustaining minor injuries. So 4 weeks ago, he's been in the hospital for 4 weeks, no broken bones, nothing. A comprehensive evaluation by a multidisciplinary team determined that he had no fractures, cardiac abnormalities, stroke, tumor, or hemorrhage. Early in his hospitalization, he developed pneumonia, which responded rapidly to antibiotic treatment. So I think the implication there is that essentially his pneumonia has essentially resolved, is the implication, I think. So he doesn't even have pneumonia anymore. The remainder of his hospital stay focused on physical therapy and strategies to reduce his risk of future falls. So it's at physical therapy. So he's admitted to a hospital for physical therapy. He has been medically cleared to continue fully participating in his intensive physical therapy program. So I just gotta say, like, this makes no sense, like, medically speaking. I don't know if there's any doctors or anybody in the chat. Make this make sense, please. That doesn't make sense to me. The idea that you would be admitted to the hospital for 4 weeks for a fall in which they found nothing significant in there. There's nothing. They're saying post-polio, which I don't know what the fuck that's supposed to mean, other than you had polio as a child. What does that mean? Some like vague, like your muscles didn't develop as well as others, maybe your bones are weak. I don't know what that could really, but you're a human being that walks normal as an adult. So like, unless the idea is that like your muscles wasted earlier in life or whatever. That doesn't make sense to me. The idea that's like post-polio condition and he still needs to be admitted into the hospital makes you wonder what's going on. Although on the flip side, it's kind of like, what is even the point of this? He's already, I guess, marked himself absent from votes, and this actually kind of kicks the Republicans in the nuts to some regard, because this, like, I guess they have this like big SAVE Act they got coming up soon, so this puts him in an even tighter spot with one less person to vote there, so he won't be showing up for voting. I don't know, maybe he is alive. This just seems fucking bizarre to me. Maybe he's going to pull like a 12th hour move on some vote, something crazy. I don't know what to make of this, but I gotta be real. I feel like this dude's probably fucking dead. I don't know why the move is to like not to keep him to pretend like he's alive or whatever, but it just feels like this dude's dead. But either way, he's been living dead for a long time now, so if he's not dead, he probably will be soon. But I don't know. Maybe the idea is just to hold on to the seat, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe different states. I'm assuming different states have different moves here. Like we just covered Graham. I mean, they just passed it right off to his sister. So I don't know what the move would be if Mitch McConnell died. So I don't really know what reasoning there would be to even like do the whole weekend at Bernie's routine. Like I don't know. I mean, he's retiring in January, so they've got to make it 5 months. That seems way too long to pretend like he's alive. He's not voting, so I just don't really understand. Unless he is alive, and this is some weird, like, oh, we're going to keep a secret weapon of Mitch McConnell, just hide him in the hospice care. He's actually fine. But like one of these days, right when we got some political something going on, you're like, oh my God, the Democrats going to pull this off. And then you go, fucking like a 12th moment, like fucking like WWE, like Undertaker coming out of the casket, fucking Mitch McConnell, fucking hitting that vote button or whatever. I don't know. This story makes no sense to me. You guys, anyone in the chat, feel free to let me know. Does this make sense? Why would we even pretend like Mitch McConnell is still alive when he's not? It makes little sense to me. I might be missing something here. But one last death, and then we'll get into some foreign policy. Also check into the chat, say hello. But there was actually a sad death over the weekend. We had Dr. Grant from Jurassic Park. What is his name? It's Sam Neill. This guy, he's also like one of these characters that you forget he's been like everything growing up. Just kind of, shows up as the weird villain in just odd movies that just kind of like a C movies that you're like, whatever, but always just weirdly does way too good of a job in everything he does. So, didn't really know him personally, but the work I saw of his, big up Sam Neill. Really enjoyed Jurassic Park. R.I.P. So I can at least honor some human life here instead of dunking on life that's probably dead like McConnell and Graham. With that, let's roll the chat, say some hellos, say some more good mornings, and then we'll get into foreign policy, see what's going on there. Good morning, Mega Nerd. Good morning. Anyone got some room for some ladybugs that need a good home? For those who know, I forget what is the ladybug lore? I know there was some. Was it like a report or I forget? There was something. God, what was it? Where'd the ladybugs thing come from? I know it's related to Lindsey Graham. I don't know if it was like one of those like salacious stories of like, I don't know. Someone in the chat remind me the details of the ladybug lore, because I remember I swear that was like some sort of salacious report story, like sources say, trust me bro sort of thing. But I don't know, I forget the specifics, like as if there was like some male prostitutes claiming he said something about ladybugs, and I think it had something to do with his like his little what do you call when you go in your butthole and those little, it's not a hernia, that's a why can't I think of what it's called, women get them when they're pregnant, then they're like from straining. I can't think of why can't I think of anything right now? All right, whatever, move on. Good morning, retardo. Good morning. Good morning, JC. Good morning. Good morning, Fire Pixie. Good to see you here. Fire Pixie again gets another good morning because she is on Rumble and YouTube, doubling up the boostage there. So good morning, saying ding dong, the witch is dead. Good morning, matzo balls. Good morning, Alien Big Cat, reminding us that Graham is dead. Fire Pixie said the body being shown taken to the house in local news here is a double. Perhaps. I don't know. I didn't even know they took a body out of his out of Lindsey Graham. I may have to check that out. Perhaps it is. I mean, I don't know. They've done crazier things. So, although maybe he just died of a heart attack. I know maybe people are being being crazy here. It just seems poetic that he would die in like a Ukrainian drone factory. So I don't know. Although the flip time, like, would Graham want that news to be out? So it's like, the whole final will stuff. So like, should that information be out? Although that would almost certainly aggravate tensions with Russia. So I don't know. I kind of like the idea of like flying in the face of his final wishes with a big fuck you, and no one will know. Perhaps Russia killed him. I don't know. Whatever. Either way, it's some beautiful irony if he gets taken out by a drone factory in Ukraine. Good morning, Bug Fights. Good morning, Marnamac. Good morning. Bug Fights doing the same thing over on YouTube as well. You double up on your good mornings too. Good morning, Tom33. So he's been constipated for a couple weeks, getting these dumps out. Hell yeah. What else we got here? Good morning, Tower Gang NPC. Good morning. Bug Fights. Tranny went out on their F-150, headed to ask the small hats for some shekels. Taken out alone, I'm guessing. Well, good luck. I'm sorry to hear that. That is really shitty. That's always like a worst nightmare. A tranny going out. A tranny going off in a blaze of glory is always something to be concerned about, for sure. What else we got? Good morning, Afahares says boobs are good, lol. But weaponized boobies are a problem, though. Mega Nerd says, imagine how knowing how being in politics also means your whole family tree is stuffed in the levers of power, too. Yeah, it looks like I was looking a little bit into the stuff her sister did. I think it was like I don't think she did any direct, the sort of political stuff that, like, Lindsey did, where he was, like, a candidate, but I think she did a lot of organizations, like, oh, she was helping this or that. So it sounds like she was kind of somewhat grifting, maybe some sort of made a job out of Lindsey, but whatever. She was a family associate. Lindsey Graham clearly helped her out, it seems. Tom says McConnell's pure AI at this point. Good morning, Vince. Vincent Nineley says, so sorry for your loss, Pixie. Says, I know how much Miss Ladybug's meant to you. Make sure to reach out to family and friends if you're feeling unsafe. Don't worry, you'll get through. I was a little confused there for a second, like something happened to Pixie, but I'm assuming she's talking about the Ladybug. Lindsey Graham, Martin McConnell's wife grows very bright, does for sure. Good morning, hey, say what now? Good morning. All right, now we're talking about ladybugs in the chat. That's nice. Good morning, Mr. Woke Reich. So he's not dead. He's just hiding his turtle shell. Yeah, he's like a little lizard person. He just kind of went in there. Oh, I just watched that movie Hail Mary, which is a pretty good movie. So highly recommend it. But like there's like the little little rock guy. He goes into like his little sleep and he's like permanently paralyzed. That's what's happening. He's like in a restorative sleep. He's just gone into his little lizard person hibernation after he suffered a fall. Feed him a little bit of adrenochrome and he'll be right back at it. Vincent. I always forget this is Gerald Hall Alt. So good to see you here, brother. Good morning, Gerald. Anal warts. That's not what I was talking about, Fire Pixie. No, it's a different thing. It's what you get from straining. It's like vessels when they don't really fully burst, but they like come to the surface and they create little like nodules where like the blood is focused and it's painful. I don't know. I can't think what it's called. Tom says Graham's ass mole was discovered by a gay hooker. Yes, that was the lore. It was something like that, I believe. So his moles. Okay, hemorrhoids. That's what I was looking for. A hemorrhoid. But I guess it was his moles, is what the chat is saying. I thought it was his hemorrhoids. So, apparently it's supposedly his nickname that too. Outside the story given by the male prostitute, says Mega Nerd. Good morning, Cubertimo. Good morning. Good morning. All right. That's the lore, guys. As Fire Pixie says, that's the lore. Yes, is that the ladybugs were moles. So not hemorrhoids. I was wrong, but you did learn what a hemorrhoid is today. So learning stuff every single day. Learn stuff. But the ladybugs were moles, which is some sort of claim from some male prostitute that apparently they like to talk about Lindsey Graham's butthole moles. So I'm sorry you had to learn that, but I had to learn that, so you did too. So let's go ahead and get into foreign policy. Let's check in there. Shit really did kick off I think we covered last week. We're back to hostilities, just where we're at in the stage of things. Shit's popping off. We're basically in full blown war at this point. But let's check in on the 9th. This is a piece from Friday, I believe, the 9th. What was the 9th? Friday was Thursday, but it says Iran's military on Thursday launched attacks on U.S. bases across the region following a second round of major U.S. airstrikes against Iran as the U.S. MOU to end the conflict has collapsed. According to Iran's press TV, the Iranian army initially launched a massive barrage of kamikaze drones targeting a Patriot missile system in Kuwait, a satellite antenna for early warnings in Qatar, and fuel depots belonging to the U.S. military in Bahrain. Later on Thursday, the IRGC announced it targeted U.S. military bases in Jordan using 10 ballistic missiles, calling it a second wave of retaliation for the U.S. strikes. In our previous statement, we said that any repetition of aggression would expand our response to other enemy bases in the region. The IRGC said, in the second phase, we have made good on that threat against the aggression of the child-killing American military. The IRGC added the enemy's command and control center in West Asia and Al-Azraq base in Jordan were crushed with 10 ballistic missiles. And if there were any further U.S. attacks, the remaining U.S. bases in the region will not be spared from our heavy fire. For its part, Jordan said its forces intercepted 8 missiles launched from Iran and claimed there were no casualties or damage. According to Iranian media, the 2 days of U.S. airstrikes killed 14 Iranian military personnel and civilians and wounded 78 others. Some of the strikes hit civilian infrastructure, including a railway line connecting Tehran to Mashhad and bridges in eastern Iran, which I know there's another piece where they're talking about how this is a war crime since it's hitting civilian infrastructure, which it is. U.S. CENTCOM says forces bombed 90 targets inside Iran in the second wave that began on Wednesday night. And yeah, and that rail line one too, like the only real purpose for it, the only real logistical purpose for destroying that rail line, and especially in this given time, was like essentially the only major method of transportation in and out wherever they're doing the current Khamenei funeral processions and stuff. So you have essentially millions of people that have come for the whole the formalities, and these people have to leave, and now you've essentially disrupted this whole process, really just throwing things into a little bit of miniature chaos of sorts there. So only real purpose for that was to be petty for those attending the funeral. And then we're also, the Strait of Hormuz, unsurprisingly, is closed. On the Iranian side of things, Iran has reaffirmed the Strait of Hormuz remains closed to all traffic, despite U.S. claims to the contrary and U.S. airstrikes against the country, which continued on Sunday. Due to recent unlawful movements by U.S. military forces in the region, transit through the Strait of Hormuz is currently not possible, said Iran's recently created Persian Gulf Strait Authority. As soon as stability and calm are restored, all requests will be reviewed according to scheduling and the necessary permits will be issued. Also on Sunday, U.S. CENTCOM insisted the Strait of Hormuz was open and said that the U.S. forces are positioned and prepared to ensure that freedom of navigation remains available despite unwarranted Iranian aggression, harassment, threats, and arbitrary declarations. Iran does not control the strait. Iranian media reported that Iran's Qasem Island was targeted with up to 11 enemy projectiles, and a U.S. official told Barak Ravid, Axios reporter, that the U.S. had conducted a few strikes on missile and air defenses systems as well as IRGC small boats at a couple of locations around the Strait of Hormuz. Later on Sunday, CENTCOM announced it was launching yet another round of strikes against Iran, and a U.S. official told the New York Times that it would be a bigger round of attacks than those conducted earlier in the day. The strikes came after Iranian forces launched retaliatory strikes targeting U.S. bases in Jordan, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Oman following U.S. bombings that hit Iran on Saturday. And this will come as no surprise to any of you, just as Iran closing the strait was no surprise that the blockade is back in effect. So now not only is it closed on the Iranian side, it is also now closed on the U.S. side. But now this gets even more interesting, though. Now the U.S. side is apparently preparing to charge 20% fee for essentially transit. So that's the move now. So after flipping the fuck out that Iran would dare to ask for fees to travel in and out of the Hormuz Strait, that was like a no-go for them. Well, now they're going to do it. So Trump on Monday said the U.S. is reinstating the blockade of Iranian ports and would also charge a 20% fee for all cargo shipped through the Strait of Hormuz, a declaration that came after U.S. officials had repeatedly said it would be illegal for Iran to charge fees for ships passing through the waterway. The Hormuz Strait is open and will remain open with or without Iran. We are reinstating the Iranian blockade, so named because it is only stopping Iran ships or customers from entering or leaving. All other countries will have fair and open use of the strait, Trump wrote on Truth Social. CENTCOM later announced its forces would begin the blockade on Tuesday, July 14th. That's today at 4 p.m. So here in 4 hours, they're supposed to start it up again. Trump said the U.S. will be, from this point forward, known as the guardian of the Hormuz Strait, but as such and as a matter of fairness, will be reimbursed at the rate of 20% on all cargo shipped for any and all costs necessary to do the job of providing safety and security in this very volatile section of the world. The process and formation will begin immediately. Trita Parsi, executive vice president of the Quincy Institute, noted in a post on X that Trump's proposed 20% fee is significantly higher than Iran's reported plan, which would amount to about 1 to 2% of an oil tanker's cargo. Abbas Araghchi also noted the difference in his response, where he mocked the U.S. president. That's the Iranian foreign minister, for those who don't know. POTUS is absolutely right. Whoever provides secure and safe passage of commercial vessels through the Strait of Hormuz should be compensated for that service. Iran has always been the guardian of the strait and will remain so forever. 20% is, of course, too much. We will be fair. So don't know what to make of this one. And another interesting little wrinkle to all of the things happening here is it looks like the whole Saudi-Yemen beef has come back to the surface. In previous goes at in the previous, essentially when this whole Iran stuff started off initially, and Yemen was kind of getting in the mix of all this, Saudis kind of notably through all of this has stayed out of it. So I just find this particularly interesting that, essentially we have Saudi is entering the fray here, just really reigniting their war with the Houthis, as the piece says here. So just interesting, since the Houthis have been this thing sitting in the wing, this problem that complicates things even further. We have the Strait of Hormuz issue, also this intractable issue of the Yemenis. We're not really able to get anything militarily really done there, and they also have what's like the Al-Manab, I forget what the fuck it's called. We're gonna read it here in a second. Their strait as well. They could close, or they had closed with the whole Gaza stuff way back in the day. But Saudi had always stayed out of that. And with all this Iran stuff, this has been this, issue, this balancing act that you really don't want Yemen to get fully into, especially to the point of, blocking off their strait. Notably, we ended up getting some sort of, we did all, I guess we, not me, but the United States did all sorts of war crimes over there, to reopen the strait, the Manab Strait or whatever it's called. Back in the day when the whole Gaza stuff was really at peak horror. That's when the Yemenis were essentially in unison with or working with the Gazans, and essentially were preventing any Israeli anything or other coming in and out through that strait. That's when we, the United States essentially got in the mix there, and the Saudis stayed out of it. Then I believe the Yemenis got a little bit, the Houthis got a little bit mixed up in some of the early Iran stuff. They backed off. They never closed the strait because we actually had a ceasefire deal with them that we agreed to stop fucking with them, and they wouldn't close it for us, but they'd be open to closing it for other people. So point being is this whole Saudi Houthi thing, it's a little confusing how this will play out. To some degree, this allows Saudi to essentially kind of, to some degree, handle that situation over there in the corner. A little confusing whether the U.S. would even really get mixed up in here since we have our own deals with them. But either way, interesting development. But Saudi-led forces bombed the international airport in Sana'a, Yemen on Monday, reigniting the war with Yemen's Houthis, officially known as Ansar Allah, which has been in a state of ceasefire that has held relatively well since 2022. The attack was claimed by Yemen's so-called internationally recognized government, which is based in Saudi Arabia and doesn't have an air force of its own, meaning the strikes were almost certainly launched by Saudi warplanes. In response, which for those who don't understand, that's like essentially the crux of like the whole issue between Yemen and Saudi, or maybe not the crux, but one of the major points of the whole issue between Yemen and Saudi is essentially they were trying to control that area. They have their own supposed recognized government there, whereas the Houthis are not the recognized government. They still get referred to as rebels by many people, despite the fact they have been the government there for quite a fucking long time. So they're not really rebels. In response, Ansar Allah's military spokesman Yahya Saree vowed Yemen would hit back and said the era of de-escalation between the two sides was over. A spokesman for the Saudi-led coalition later claimed that Saudi air defenses intercepted a ballistic missile threat launched by the terrorist Houthi militia toward the southern region. Saree then announced that Yemeni forces targeted Saudi Arabia's Aba International Airport with a number of ballistic missiles and unmanned aerial vehicles. Purpose of strikes in Sana'a Airport was to prevent the landing of a plane from Iran carrying a Yemeni delegation that attended the funeral of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Despite the strikes, the plane was rerouted and landed at the airport in the Yemeni Red Sea port city of Hodeidah. The strikes came after the Saudi-led coalition threatened to take action in response to an Iranian flight that landed in Sana'a on July 3rd. At the time, Ansar Allah said its forces repelled Saudi airplane or warplanes attempting to interfere with the flight. And 2 days later, Houthi fighters launched an offensive against Saudi-backed forces, the heaviest fighting between the two sides in years. While the two sides agreed to a ceasefire in 2022, a long-standing blockade in Yemen that included restrictions on Sana'a airport was only partially lifted. In recent months, calls have been growing in Yemen for a complete end to the siege. The escalation in Yemen comes after the ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran has collapsed, meaning Yemen could be another front in the regional war. Ansar Allah could also potentially close the Bab al-Mandeb. That's what it is. I can never remember how to say it correctly. Bab al-Mandeb, which connects the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, a move that would further exacerbate the global economic crisis caused by the U.S.-Israeli war against Iran. The U.S. and Ansar Allah agreed to a ceasefire last year after Trump conducted a brutal bombing campaign in Yemen for about a month and a half, which failed to stop Yemeni attacks on Israel and the blockade of Israeli shipping in the Red Sea that was being done in response to Israel's genocidal war and siege on Gaza. Ansar Allah is known for its resiliency as it's faced a U.S.-backed Saudi-UAE war and blockade from 2015 to 2022, which killed at least 377,000 people. According to UN numbers, and only became a more formidable fighting force that in that time as it began successfully striking oil infrastructure in Saudi Arabia. The group first took power in Sana'a in 2014, and the Saudis failed to reinstall former Yemeni President Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi, who died in Riyadh earlier this year. So this could be an interesting new development and all this stuff going on. We'll see what happens here. Hopefully it settles down. But let's check in on our greatest ally. Not looking like such great allies as in the West Bank. They have abducted Representative Ro Khanna. They ended up releasing him. So, but either way, still wild. So U.S. Representative Ro Khanna reports he was held at gunpoint for more than an hour earlier this week during his visit to the West Bank when Israeli settlers confronted his entourage as he toured a destroyed Palestinian village. The incident took place at the destroyed village of Korbat Zanuta, a village near Hebron that was reportedly ethnically cleansed by settlers in 2023. Khanna reported the settler group summoned the IDF, and the IDF sided with the settlers over the Americans. So the settlers essentially held him at gunpoint, and the IDF came and essentially sided with him. Cameron Kansky, which is Khanna's aide, said the group was held for more than an hour and called the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem for help. Eventually, police arrived at the scene and dispersed the settlers, ending the incident. The IDF said their troops and police officers arrived on the scene and dispersed Israeli civilians, but doesn't address Kana's report the initial troops that arrived sided with the settlers over the matter. Israeli officials said Kana had not coordinated the visit with them, so that's why they weren't provided with security escort, which would be normal for an official visit to the West Bank. Now let's check in on Lebanon and what Israel is doing over there. Strikes in Lebanon continue. Surprise, surprise, as Israel DM says they are applying Rafah model. Israeli forces continue to carry out drone strikes across southern Lebanon again this weekend, along with reported artillery strikes against towns around the Tyre district. At least one person was reported killed in incidents and several others wounded. The one killed person was on a motorcycle near Kafar Rumin when he was struck by a drone. Another drone hit a pickup truck transporting garbage around Kafar Dajjal, also around the same district, wounding 2 people. So, hey, only one person, that during that period of time. So what was it, like essentially the 12th, so just a couple days ago. So that's looking like it's not as bad. Although, let's be real, it's kind of looking like this will be like kind of this Gaza sort of situation, as they're implying here. Mass demolition in the southernmost parts of Lebanon is an ongoing problem, with IDF, or the Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz, quoted as saying the country was applying the Rafah model on Lebanon, and that southern Lebanon would ultimately turn to Gaza, citing the mass-level destruction inflicted in the Gaza Strip in recent years. Though Israel has at times presented their invasion and occupation of Lebanon as entirely focused on fighting Lebanon or Hezbollah and defending northern Israel, Katz has repeatedly pressed the idea of destroying civilian sites in the south, declaring a few weeks ago the Shiite villages in Lebanon must disappear. Katz had similarly said a substantial number of displaced Lebanese civilians would not be allowed to return their homes, even as the Israeli government rejects accusations of forced population transfers, illegal under international law, on the grounds that technically civilians weren't prevented from returning home. Okay. And this it continues on from yesterday. Here's a piece from yesterday. Demolitions and shelling continue against southern Lebanon as Israeli occupation forces continue to show no signs of withdrawing. An official suggests the token pullbacks agreed to during the most recent peace deal are simply not going to happen. So these are even just token, symbolic gestures, and even still not happening. Pilot zone pullbacks were never meant to be more than symbolic move to begin with, offering Lebanon a PR win, even as Israel only actually left a couple of tiny, insignificant parts of southern Lebanon. Almost immediately it was announced the IDF was postponing the pilot zone program, which meant to hand those small zones to the Lebanese military over concerns that Shiites might conceivably be involved. The suggestion now is that nothing may happen until the October Israeli elections. Israel ambassador to the U.S., Yechiel Letir, who is now claiming to be leading the negotiations, insisted that the withdrawal wasn't technically delayed, but that it was always meant to be contingent on Hezbollah being totally dismantled and removed from those areas before Israel would consider leaving. Hezbollah has no business in Lebanon, Leiter said, adding that Israel and Lebanon are on the same page. That page, it seems, is for continued occupation until Lebanon manages to accomplish something that virtually no one serious believes they can accomplish. In the meantime, this same page relationship continues to involve not only firing artillery shells against southern Lebanese towns and villages, but Israeli ground troops inside Lebanon actively demolishing homes wholesale and setting buildings on fire in the villages Israel Defense Ministry has said before need to disappear. Another major explosion was reported yesterday in the southern town of Bint Jibil, one of the towns the IDF made the biggest deal of having conquered earlier in the war, and now seems to relish destroying with large-scale demolitions. In smaller villages in the neighborhoods of Hadatha, the demolition seems to mostly involve setting homes on fire. And over in Gaza, just checking in on the death toll there on this was on the 9th. So this is the Friday's news. There were 6 killed. And then yesterday, over the weekend, they killed 6. So this piece covering over the weekend. This was on Sunday, particularly. They killed 6 people. One was a 9-year-old girl, Talu Abu Matar, who was killed by Israeli gunfire at tent camp near the Al Burej refugee camp in central Gaza. Footage from Gaza shows a girl family mourning her at the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital in Deir al-Balah. And then the most recent 24-hour period of deaths, we have 1. So they've gone down to 1 in the past 24 hours. So I guess that's something. Israeli strike in Gaza on Monday in Gaza City, targeting a motorcycle, killing at least 1 Palestinian as the IDF continues its constant violations of the U.S.-backed ceasefire deal. According to the Palestinian news agency Wafa, the motorcycle struck in Gaza City's southwestern Tal al-Hawa neighborhood and other. Gaza Health Ministry sent its daily update on Monday that it recorded the Israeli killing of 7 Palestinians with injury of 32. And this brought them up to a number of 1,108 Palestinians that have been killed since October 2025, which is when the last so-called ceasefire deal went into effect. And before we get out of here, I do have one last story, one last awful story of the sort of shit that Israel does. Here's a piece from The Guardian. It says the IDF accused of field execution of Palestinian driver bringing aid into Gaza. Here's a picture of the guy. Palestinian driver bringing food aid from the World Central Kitchen into Gaza has been killed by an Israeli soldier in a field execution, according to witnesses in the local Truckers Association, which said it may suspend operations and protests. Ahmad Eslim was shot in the head on Wednesday when an aid convoy stopped because of a breakdown to one truck soon after entering Gaza, according to 3 accounts. Israeli soldiers ordered the drivers to dismount, and one of them shot Eslim in the head when his hands were raised. Another driver in the 4-truck convoy, Dia Mansour, said the shooting happened in the Philadelphia corridor, a military road on the southern edge of the Gaza Strip. After the trucks broke down, we waited for authorization to get out and inspect it because every movement we make has to be coordinated in advance. While we were waiting, an Israeli military vehicle arrived. The soldiers ordered Ahmad and me to get out of our trucks, and they ordered another driver, Al-Ashat, to get out as well. The driver at the front of the convoy, Fares Mohussin, remained inside his truck and didn't get out. They made us stand by the side of the road. They ordered me to take off my clothes and forced me to sit under the sun. Then they brought Ahmad out of his truck. When the soldiers began talking to Ahmad while he stood with his hands raised, Ahmad did not speak Hebrew, and it seemed the soldiers did not understand his Arabic. Suddenly, they shot him. He was hit in the head and died at the scene. It appeared they were trying to find out why he had stopped, or why we had stopped, but they did not understand the situation and opened fire immediately, without any discussion or attempt to communicate. So this is a claim being made here, which at this point I am inclined to believe it. With that, let's roll the chat, say some more good mornings, and then we will get into our final segment of the day, the MKULTRA hearing / program to Chickenhawk. So let's check in on you beautiful people. Cubert wants to know which one of you guys raped the life out of Lindsey Graham. Said that homo could take a pounding. He sure could. Who else we got in here? Oh, we got a super chat in here from Fire Pixie. Says thank you all for the help in my time of grief. For those who aren't aware, Fire Pixie has just lost someone very near and dear to her heart. Someone who helped the fabric of society run smooth and absent of corruption, and making sure we stay safe in the continental United States. That being her political leader, her local political leader. I'm being silly, of course. Fire Pixie is one of those South Carolinians that lost their old senator there, Lindsey Graham. So sorry about that. Or am I mixing up? No, that's right. That's South Carolina's Lindsey Graham. Yeah. Who else we got here? Good morning, JMS. Good morning. Good morning. Big hearts up to Fire Pixie. Good morning. All right, you guys are talking about the logistics of raping someone to death. That's nice. That's a fun topic. What else we got here? Good morning, Gottist. Good morning. Good morning. JMS switching to work Bluetooth. Does that mean you were playing? Are you like on the work speaker, or are you like? Or does that mean you're just listening to me on your like headphones at work? What does that mean? Cubert says yes. That is my world's best dad trophy in my pick. Those are the best trophies there are. So congrats to you for being the world's best dad. I got that award once or twice too. So I very much treasure it. With that, guys, let's get into MKUltra hearing / program to Chickenhawk. Old Representative Anna Paulina Luna, the old pretty stripper political lady. the truth broad, the old, running the truth squad. For those who aren't aware, Representative Luna, she's kind of, I forget what is it called? What is it called? She had it was the Oversight Committee. I guess she's on the Oversight Committee. She essentially, for those who aren't aware, that's been kind of the committee that's been essentially the oversight on all these different files, the Epstein files, JFK files. I think there was MLK files. Because we've had alien files now. We've had all sorts of files. We have a lot of files, and she's been kind of like the face of that, of like the head of it. So she's kind of in the True Squad broad, I guess is one way you could look at it. Old Anna Paulina Luna. The whole purpose of this oversight committee was essentially like with this, like say with the Epstein files, like with the oversight. Essentially, they were the ones that were supposed to be holding with these disclosure occurring. Like the whole purpose here was like this oversight committee was to ensure that the disclosure was properly happening as it was supposed to be happening. So with the Epstein files, the idea is that like the oversight committee was supposed to be the political apparatus that exists for the American people to ensure they're getting what they're supposed to be getting, like which was a certain legal, like there was like I forget the specific legal provisions of what was supposed to be released, but these were the people ensuring that this is what happened. Like they were supposed to make sure the law was followed and the people got what they were asking for, theoretically, by this like theory of government or whatever. So that's who Luna is, but in a weird fucked up way, it's kind of seems like it's actually, she hasn't been so much for the people as she's been for the establishment, has been my perspective through all this stuff. But I haven't really dug a lot through this MKUltra one. I have a live, I forget what it's called, like a live tweet thread or whatever, on it. So we'll kind of go over like what happened here in a moment. So I don't know. I'm open to this being worthwhile, but I am obviously super skeptical anytime Luna or anytime anything the establishment is thrown together. Though the political elite go, oh, we're having a hearing on something. You're like, my eyes always roll. So I don't expect a lot here, but it'd be interesting to see what we can glean from here. This is a piece. Here's a little post from Representative Luna talking about this MKUltra hearing that she had. I believe it was last Tuesday, or maybe it was the week before that. But either way, it's been a little bit of a minute. When was it? It was, let me see. It was June 23rd. Sorry, I want to find out exactly when these hearings were. So June 33rd. So it was actually 2 weeks ago from today that they did the hearing. So we're just now covering it. Sorry. Been busy, but I haven't actually seen a whole lot of chatter really about it. So I don't think I'm too late to the party, so it's okay. But let's dig through this. Here is Robert Scavarla. I can never say his name. Here is his live tweet thread that we're going to dig through a little bit to figure out what exactly happened here. She says, GOP Oversight Committee's MKUltra hearing is kicking off with Representative Luna giving a brief history on the program. He says early issue is that Luna is only focusing on the CIA. While the CIA was responsible for oversight, other orgs and Five Eyes were involved. Donald Hebb's sensory deprivation experiments were sponsored by the Canadian Defense Research Board. Stephen Kinzer also showed up. He's the author of Poisoner in Chief. Good book, really good book that focuses on Gottlieb. Why am I forgetting his name? I'm forgetting Gottlieb's first name for some reason. I just had it in my head and then it disappeared. Gottlieb. I'm looking it up real quick because I want to know. Sidney Gottlieb. That's who it is. Why can't I think of it? Sidney Gottlieb. So he wrote that book on Sidney Gottlieb, who's kind of like, I guess the overmaster of sorts of the MKUltra. I guess you could say he was kind of like the top dog. I mean, most people think of like Jolly West, but Jolly West like essentially kind of worked for Gottlieb. They say Poisoner in Chief though, because like this stuff isn't. I mean, Jolly was probably like more specifically like the mind control nonsense, whereas Gottlieb was like the whole thing, because it was more about, I guess you could say it was more like alternative methods would be a more broader way to look at it. For example, the book was called Poisoner in Chief. So to kind of understand, so some of the like heart attack guns and stuff like that, it's kind of wrapped up in the same sort of operations, same sort of, intelligence operations that were happening there. They're all kind of wrapped up together, these sort of weird, spooky, kooky things. But anyways, Gottlieb was kind of like the, I guess Jolly West is more specifically the MKUltra you think of, but Gottlieb was kind of like the whole thing, essentially. Now, so Kinzer showed up there. I guess he provided an overview. Skavarla says, Kinzer states the most important role of the government in understanding MKUltra at this juncture is to fully classify all documents, including mandatory declassification reviews for redacted documents already released to the public. He argues that mind control may have been a myth in 1963 when Lyman Kirkpatrick issued the CIA's IG report on MKUltra, but science has advanced since that time, and it's possible those advances could achieve something along those lines. Tom O'Neill also showed up, which we're going to talk more about him in a little bit. He's the author of Chaos. He argues the CIA lied in 1977 when it called MKUltra a failure. He believes MKUltra may be tied to his research on the Manson family. For those who aren't familiar with Tom O'Neill, that is, the book Chaos focuses greatly on Manson. O'Neill is now discussing psychologist Jolly West, an MKUltra contractor who received funding under Subproject 43. O'Neill claims correspondence between West and MKUltra chief Sidney Gottlieb begins in 1953. O'Neill claims West declared the CIA in a report that he could replace real memories with false ones using a combination of narcotic drugs like LSD and hypnosis. He states the CIA altered the West report before it was turned over to Congress. Apparently, we also got a Dr. Elizabeth Genexi who showed up. She's formerly the senior program officer at the National Institutes of Health. She gives a brief history of the NIH. She only seems to be referencing funding cuts and political appointments harming the NIH. So I don't understand what her purpose is here. Luna cuts her off to ask O'Neill about MK Naomi, the CIA's bioweapons program that preceded MKUltra. O'Neill says his research doesn't have anything to do with MK Naomi outside of finding a small number of documents. Luna redirects to Kinzer, who also states he has minimal knowledge of MK Naomi. Luna redirects again to Operation Paperclip. Kinzer is able to provide info about the U.S. bringing over Nazi officers like Kurt Blum as a continuation of the Nazi experiments during World War II. First mention of the JFK assassin, Luna asks O'Neill why Jolly West was asked to interview Jack Ruby after Ruby assassinated Lee Harvey Oswald. O'Neill states West inserted himself into the case. Inserting an editorial opinion here, says Robert, nothing they're discussing is new, which, yeah, that's what I've noticed so far. Nothing I'm hearing here is really anything spectacular or anything. Kinzer and O'Neill are simply being asked to summarize info in their books, both of which have been available for over 5 years, which I have read both of their books. So this is nothing, so far this hearing is nothing but a rehash of shit I've read. Representative Burleson is asking about the Pont Saint-Esprit poisoning in France, which I believe first was tied to MKUltra by Hank Albarelli in his book, A Terrible Mistake. Kinzer states he doesn't know that though it could have been part of Project Artichoke. So I don't really understand what the purpose of this so far is. It's just people, so they brought in a couple authors that know, like, I don't know. So, okay, there's nothing new here. They asked about Operation Midnight Climax to Kinzer. So, yeah, this is kind of like basically a really, really weak-ass version of a podcast. Like, imagine a podcast, like, imagine we brought on Steven Kinzer and we had 1,000 fucking hosts and we just asked them random lame questions. That's what we're doing here. This is okay. I'm scrolling through here, see what else is worthwhile. So it's just, I guess they're having back and forth between people here. Bober asked about Chinese and Soviet brainwashing that inspired MKUltra. So, okay, I really don't know what the purpose of this is. Representative Mace asked about Anthony Fauci and his vaccines causing turbo cancers. Yeah, this seems pretty fucking stupid so far, to be completely honest. Just scrolling. Let's keep scrolling. Let's get towards the end of this. Here's another editorial opinion from Robert. Let's hear what he says. They're intentionally avoiding the subject as MKUltra as a precursor to the CIA's torture program at Guantanamo. Alfred McCoy covers this in graphic detail in his book, A Question of Torture, which I might have to read that one. I'm going to bookmark that real quick so I can save that for later. Sorry. There we go. Let me see. Scrolling through here, is anything else worthwhile? Burchett's involved too. He's always fun. He suggests a continuation of MKUltra and algorithms. Ooh, which for those who aren't aware, he's like, is he Tennessee? I think Burchett, kind of a boomer, real boomer type, but he's the one they every now and then use to deliver us some weird, interesting alien info. And it's just funny because he's such like a country boomer, hearing him talk about aliens and shit. So yeah, he thinks that the MKUltra was continued as an algos, which is funny, but with a boomer saying, or which I say not funny, but I guess is maybe somewhat prescient. But when a boomer is asking it, I kind of roll my eyes instinctively. So this is algos targeting loners to take a shot at a president. Says he couldn't speculate on Thomas Crooks or Robinson. Says O'Neill. Yeah. All right. Let me see if there's anything else worthwhile. And I think that's really about it. I think that's the extent of what this hearing is. So, I mean, if you guys watch my podcast, you guys get far more value out of my show than you get out of a normal hearing, because this is a joke. Let's move on past this, I guess. Here's Jake Shields. He says, once you see how Jack Ruby was connected to John David Norman, John Wayne Gacy, and Dean Carroll, you see he actually was chopping kids' arms and legs off. And Jake is responding here to a clip of O'Neill from this hearing. So let's see a little bit of O'Neill talking from this hearing, talking about Jack Ruby and his connection into all of this.
West inserted himself into the case when Ruby was the day of the shooting. The day after the shooting, West approached the judge in the preliminary hearings and asked to be assigned to the case. He was refused by the judge. After Ruby was convicted at his first trial, an associate of West, Dr. Hubert Winston Smith, who was a psychiatrist and an attorney, took over Ruby's defense for his appeal, and he had already discussed appointing Ruby to the case, West to the case. And as you said, West examined Ruby alone at the jail cell and emerged to announce that in the preceding 48 hours he had an acute psychotic break from which he would never recover. He had been declared competent to stand trial the first time by a panel of, I think, 8 psychiatrists. This psychotic break lasted until his death in 1967. 2 months after West examined him, Ruby testified for the first time and only time to the Warren Commission. And it was the first time he ever publicly was supposed to say what his reasons were for shooting Oswald. The testimony had to be halted because he was babbling incoherently, and as Arlen Specter, who was the counsel to the commission, wrote in his memoirs, he pulled him aside and said that they were cutting off the arms and legs of children in Albuquerque and El Paso, and he said he was making no sense whatsoever. West, in his letters to Gottlieb from 1953, discussed experiments where he would induce specific mental disorders in people without their awareness. A year before the Kennedy assassination, he publicly spoke in Oklahoma City and talked about his LSD experiments inducing psychiatric breaks and psychosis in people with the use of LSD, which of course later contradicted what he told the New York Times when he said he never used LSD in animal experimentation.
What an interesting connection. I'm out of time, but I'll be now recognizing Mr. Burleson from.
All right, so there's Tom O'Neill there, giving you talking about essentially Jack Ruby's psychotic break, the infamous visit from Jolly West shortly prior, and it goes even deeper in that, even deeper than all that, which we will get into in a moment. But before we go deeper down that rabbit hole, I figure we should take a moment, talk about Tom O'Neill a little bit. Something to be. I don't know what the deal is with this guy. Maybe he's completely on the up and up, but you know, there's certain characters that have a little light glow to him, and he's no exception here. Chaos. This is from Jay Wilderness here. It says Chaos author and MKUltra disclosure poster boy Tom O'Neill hangs out at Peter Thiel's and Marilyn Manson's house, appears on Tealite podcast, and does events with Rick Doblin, who funded MAPS, Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, and did a follow-up study to Timothy Leary's Concord prison experiment, which ironically sought to test psychedelics on prisoners. And he says, follow up to that tweet. He says, "Do you trust this man?" And this is this Rick guy, I guess, this guy associate of Tom O'Neill, who's undergraduate at New College of Florida, was a 25-year follow-up to the classic Good Friday experiment, which evaluated the potential of psychedelic drugs to catalyze religious experiences. He also conducted a 34-year follow-up study to Timothy Leary's Concord prison experiment. And Jay Wilderness says, and just to send me completely insane, there's of course a connection between O'Neill and both Courtney Love and her father, Hank Harrison. Let me see, what is he even sharing here? I'm not sure the connection he's making here, to be completely honest, because he's sharing some sort of... Oh, I see it. I'm retarded. I read it wrong. I think it's from Instagram he's sharing here. It says, Chaos, Charles Manson, Courtney Love on Billy Corgan podcast, The Magnificent Others. It says, fun fact, I interviewed Courtney years ago and her dad, Hank Harrison, years later. Look him up. So, I mean, I don't know. That's not that significant, I don't think. Sorry, Jay. I don't think any of that was necessarily too significant. Let's look through some of these excerpts he shared in the initial post, because there is weird stuff. I guess I'll go ahead and stop beating around the bush. One of the main things most people focus on his book is the notable absence of the Scientology connection, which a lot of people might be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Well, let me introduce you to a little somebody called Dana Dudog. Go check out her work. She talks about that shit a lot. And it's pretty known for those really embroiled in the Manson sphere that like that motherfucker had like talked to the process, and he'd done a few notable things. Now I can't remember if he did mention them at all in the book, or if it was completely absent, or if he only put some mention of it. But a lot of the known lore is notably absent in regards to Scientology there, and the process, and which are basically one and the same. And it's completely an appropriate place for it to be included is in a book like this. So, I mean, maybe you could say maybe you didn't want to open this whole other, go down this whole other rabbit hole. I don't know. But either way, that was the most notable thing that he didn't hone in on, which, if you are someone who's, I guess, a pattern recognizer like myself, an aficionado, that's something also notable about this guy palling around with Peter Thiel. If you're kind of aware of how the process has moved and, what we think it may be in Scientology, and, you see him hanging out with Peter Thiel a bunch, and being that you're like, okay, what the fuck is going on here? Here's a tweet where he confirms that he was at one of Peter Thiel's house parties, because he's quote tweeting somebody. He says here, Brett talks about meeting Tom O'Neill at Peter Thiel's house on in 5/5 on Instagram. He says, well, I guess I talked about it at one dinner party. So, implying obviously there's been more than just the one. Here is this Rick Doblin guy that they were talking about. It's a psychedelic. So this is the event that he's talking about: psychedelics, healers, and CIA mind controllers. Tom O'Neill and Rick Doblin. I mean, I think Jay is going a little bit nuts here with the connection that he did an event with somebody. But either way, I guess it somewhat shows the company he keeps. And here's another one showing. It says Marilyn Manson invited me inside his house. Tom O'Neill. So just another one I'm talking about meeting with Marilyn Manson. But like I said, the big thing is that he really didn't really hone in on the Scientology connection. But some of the people he pals around with, it seems somebody had posted in here. I believe this guy right here says that he attended multiple Thiel parties where they tried new psychedelics that don't even have names yet. So this is the sort of relationship he has with Thiel, to the point where they are just trying new psychedelics for fun at his place randomly that he doesn't even know the name of. This is a sort of level of comfort he has, a familiarity he has with somebody like a Peter Thiel. So I think it's worthwhile. But all right, moving on past that, I think this will click in later. When we kind of come to the end, I have something that'll tie all of this together. Where you're like, oh, I see. You were teaching me how to understand these patterns, and here they are. Here's Jake Shields again with a little bit of a thread here. It says, when John Wayne Gacy was arrested. I know these seem like disparate topics, but these things will all tie in together in a minute, and you will understand. It says, when John Wayne Gacy was arrested, he had two other serial killers working for a small business. The first was Robert Geckett, who led the Ripper crew. Despite having 20 brutal rape, torture, and murders and satanic rituals, he is one of the only serial killers with no Wikipedia. The other murderer living with Gacy was Phil Pask. He was convicted of one murder, but the prime suspect in a dozen more. He was business partners with pedo sex trafficker John David Norman. Gacy called him dangerous and claims to have made snuff films from Norman and Pask. John David Norman was busted in one of the largest porn and trafficking operations in our history. Norman had detailed records with details of 50,000 clients. He had pics of thousands of pictures of naked children, with some listed to be killed. He advertised in gay magazines. John David Norman was arrested after they were tipped off he was connected to Dean Corll. Dean kidnapped, raped, and tortured at least 29 children with two other men. He told the other men he was involved in an organized crime syndicate that bought and sold white children. After Norman's arrest, the police announced the detailed records included clients who were high up in government. Matthew Nimitz of the State Department quickly came up to pick up the files, and it was passed to the Chicago Tribune. Both inexplicitly destroyed all the records. The Warren Commission, this is where we kind of tie it back into the Ruby. We talk, or to the MKUltra stuff a little bit here, although all of this is MKUltra, and I think you might get it by the end here if you don't already. The Warren Commission shows that John David Norman had paid Jack Ruby's rent. After meeting Jolly West, Ruby ranted about killing and dismembering children in El Paso and Albuquerque. People assumed he had just gone crazy, but with him working for Norman, it hits differently. This is just the surface, but in all cases, we see repeated early releases and police interference. We see ties to Jolly West and MKUltra. The other members of the Ripper crew said it felt like Robin Gecht used mind control. 3 of these cases are in top 10 most kills in U.S. history. And let's check in on our boy Austin, who, by the way, just recently went on with the homie Jake Shields. They talked about all this stuff. There's actually, they put up multiple podcasts. I think at least 2 of them are out now. I think last time I mentioned this to you guys, there was only the one. I know they dropped another, I think it's like a 20-minute video. And there's going to be at least a couple more, I believe. At least one of them being like full-length podcasts, like probably over 2 hours long. So still more coming, so keep an eye on all that. But kind of works out. My boy kind of covered the program to Chickenhawk MKUltra rabbit hole, and we're going to keep digging down it. So here's Austin. He says, John David Norman was a prolific pedophile with multiple convictions involving charges of child molestation. Now, he was one of the multiple people we just read about in that last thread with Jake Shields just now. So instead of, I know we might get lost in all the names. It's hard. It takes a while to get familiar with them. I recommend reading the Chickenhawk, but even then, those names get overwhelming. It's hard to, like this guy to that guy, to this guy to that guy. But the whole point is like this is a ring, and it like kind of all these people connected into each other. But now let's focus in on one of them specifically, John David Norman, prolific pedophile, multiple convictions of child molestation. He's the pedophile of pedophiles, a Dallas police detective said about Norman during the 1970s investigation. After the Dallas police raided Norman's apartment in 1973, they seized over 30,000 pink index cards, listing up to 100,000 clients throughout 35 different states. The evidence seized by the authorities regarding prominent figures and federal employees identified as high-profile clients in Norman's trafficking operation was subsequently submitted to the U.S. State Department, where it would conveniently be destroyed. Norman's operation, originally known as the Odyssey Foundation, would ultimately relocate to Chicago, providing us with a nexus point connecting some of the most notorious serial killers in American history, such as Dean Corll and John Wayne Gacy, to nationwide pedophile network which abducted children for a criminal enterprise involved in child prostitution, the distribution of child pornography, and even the production of snuff films. Now, to back up a little bit, I will thread all these things together here, and actually, funny enough, one of Data Doodah's threads to make this all make sense what I'm getting at. But let's take one little detour. Let's check in on RJ Morrow. Here he's one of my favorite tweeters out there. Always posting parapolitical literature, and here is no exception. Here is him with a few excerpts. I just gave it a retweet for those who want to check it out on their own. Here he is, says George Esterbrooks, who advised U.S. intel on hypnosis, argued that highly hypnotizable people could be turned into assassins. In a 1954 MKUltra experiment, a hypnotized woman was forced to shoot another hypnotized person. She complied, then fell into a deep trance with total amnesia. Like I said, I did just retweet this. We're going to read some of this together. I'm probably going to mostly focus on the highlighted portions, though, instead of reading all of it. So if you want to check out the rest of it, or just follow RJ, you can go check out over at Tower Gang Jose, where I just gave it a retweet at. So it says the OSS candidate would be let loose in Germany, where he would take the desired action, being under compulsion that might not be denied. Lavelle sought advice on whether the scheme would work from New York psychiatrist Lawrence Kuby and from the famed Menninger brothers, Carl and William. The Menningers reported the weight of the evidence showed hypnotism is to be incapable of making people do anything that they would not otherwise do. Equally negative, Dr. Kuby added that if a German prisoner had a logical reason to kill Hitler or anyone else, he would not need hypnotism to motivate him. Yet, there were a handful of serious experimenters in the field who believed in its military potential. The most vocal partisan of this view was the head of the psychology department at Colgate University, George S.D. Esterbrooks. During the early 1930s, Esterbrooks had periodically ventured from his sleepy upstate campus to advise the military on applications of hypnotism. Esterbrooks acknowledged that hypnotism did not work on everyone, and that only 1 person in 5 made a good enough subject to be placed in a deep trance, or a state of somnambulism. He believed that only these subjects could be induced to such things against their apparent will as reveal secrets or commit crimes. He had watched respected members of the community make fools of themselves in the hands of stage hypnotists, and he had compelled his own students to reveal fraternity secrets and the details of private love affairs, all of which the subjects presumably did not want to do. Still, his experience was limited. Esterbrooks realized that the only certain way to know whether a person would commit a crime like murder under hypnosis was to have the person kill someone. Unwilling to settle the issue on his own by trying the experiment, he felt that government sanction of the process would relieve the hypnotist of personal responsibility. Any accidents that might occur during the experiments will simply be charged to profit and loss, he wrote, a very trifling portion of that enormous wastage in human life, which is part and parcel of war. Here's more here. It says, looks like a piece from a document here. Subject, hypnotic experiment and research, 10 February 1964, I think is what that number is. It says, this was to test whether the mere carrying out of the post-hypnotic would produce the state of hypnosis desired. Needless to say, it did. Says, then now here goes some details of the experiment itself. Says she would pick up a pistol nearby and fire it at Redacted. She was instructed that her rage would be so great that she would not hesitate to kill Redacted for failing to awaken. Redacted carried out these suggestions to the letter, including firing the unloaded pneumatic pistol gun at Redacted and then proceeding to fall into a deep sleep. After proper suggestions were made, both were awakened and expressed complete amnesia for the entire sequence. Redacted was again handed the gun, which she refused in an awakened state to pick up or accept from the operator. She expressed absolute denial that the foregoing sequence had happened. So to recap that, essentially they carried out an experiment, a government-sanctioned experiment, where they essentially told someone that they had a gun in their hand under a hypnotic trance, and you need to kill this person. And I think they said that they were like essentially going to, in this hypnotic state, essentially tell them that like, oh, this is, say, oh, the government sanctioned this, which is kind of weird. This was the implication, I think, of the previous excerpt. So maybe that's a way for your subconscious to kind of deaden it and be like, oh, whatever. But even then, once then they awoke, and so she essentially did it, and then once she awoken, had no memory of it and would refuse to do it in an awakened state. So seems significant to me. And then here's one last one. It says, I can't make out the name correctly. Is it Mrs. Redacted? and redacted express further interest in the transfer of control or one subject inducing hypnosis in another through the use of post-hypnotic suggestion. His redacted induced state of hypnosis in redacted. The entire buildup was to obtain the proper atmosphere before attempting a deep state of hypnosis in Miss Redacted. Continuing on, Miss Redacted excused herself to make a telephone call. Defense mechanism? ? Upon a return, a very positive approach was adopted by the operator, whereupon much deeper state of hypnosis was obtained. Immediately, a post-hypnotic was induced that when the operator accidentally dropped a steel ball in his hand to the floor, accidentally Miss Redacted would go into hypnosis. Miss Redacted then advised that she must conclude her work for the evening. She arose to adjust her hair before the mirror. The ball was dropped, and she promptly slumped back in the chair and back into hypnosis. Is the opinion of the operator that Miss Redacted, if properly trained, will continue to approve. So saying he thinks he can even do more is the implication here. Now, one thing I was hoping maybe they would mention in all of this, but I think one of the main theories that many of us in this world think comes into play here, especially when it comes to hypnosis or manipulation, is trauma. Trauma. Even said in there, only certain people are hypnotizable. Only certain people are capable of dissociating, would be another way to say it. Dissociating is also something, a skill that is developed through trauma, particularly with young children. It's essentially their defense mechanism when met upon trauma, because as a child, they typically don't really have as much of a capability of fighting or flighting. So what they do is they essentially go somewhere else in their brain, and they allow their subconscious to take over. So it seems that is the mechanism that's being played here, is what many people surmise. And so once you see all these things played together, it kind of starts to click a little bit. For example, John Wayne Gacy. What was it? The Seabees, I think was the name of it. He was part of a pretty prolific political organization. There's pictures of him with Nancy Reagan, I think, or I forget exactly. Maybe I got the name wrong, but many pictures of him with politically connected people. How we were just covering there, was it Gacy or was it one of the other guys that supposedly paid Norman rent somewhere? So you see the connection in these political people, and so it seems bizarre, but there's might even be a connection between the theories of, hey, these supposed MKUltra killers, and so surprisingly this might connect into pedo rings. Like, how do you create these things? I mean, this is where you think of things like Operation Monarch. Like, what do they mean by the symbolism of that? Like, it's a whole lifelong stage where you go through multiple metamorphoses. I mean, it kind of makes sense if you really start thinking about it from a symbolic level. But all right, bringing all these threads together into an actual story that I think you'll see what I mean. I kind of want to set the stage. I think here's a good example of kind of what I'm driving at a little bit here. Here is Dana Duda. So this is just, we're not going to go through all of this, but I figure this kind of is a good encapsulation of what we're getting at here. So she says, what are the chances, she's sharing here a piece, it says court okays U.S. entry into Willowbrook case, and she's sharing an excerpt from an article from 1973. Probably read a little bit here in a second. But she says, what are the chances that J. Stanley Pottinger, Epstein financial partner, and Iran-Contra arms smuggler extraordinaire, so glowy, hooked up with Epstein as well, this Iran-Contra guy, would be involved in the reevaluation of rehab programs at Willowbrook at the same time the Process Church of the Final Judgment started their volunteer program, which, that for those who understand Process, think of the Process Church of the Final Judgment. Go look at that in your own time, but essentially think of it as the killer cult, the killer secret cult of the cult that is Scientology is probably the best way to understand it. A lot to break out down there. Like I said, would recommend Dana here. I'll give this a retweet. But let's read through this piece a little bit so you can see what we're talking about here. So this is court okays U.S. entry into Willowbrook case. Says federal court judge Orrin Judd accepted the motion of the United States government appears friend of the court in the Willowbrook State School case currently under consideration in Brooklyn federal court. 3 lawyers from the Justice Department and 1 assistant U.S. attorney will work on the case, according to lawyers representing Willowbrook residents. J. Stanley Ponninger, assistant attorney general, appeared in Brooklyn federal court yesterday to plead the government's case. He claimed the case was important not only for the Willowbrook residents involved, but for institutionalized people throughout the country, informed sources reported. Which, keep in mind, the sort of people that they pull from for these sorts of experiments that we're implying here, very much the downtrodden. So we're talking about an institution here. The federal government had requested to assist the court in evaluating the habilitative programs at Willowbrook and to provide experts in the field of care for the mentally retarded. Since it provides funds to Willowbrook, it asked that it be allowed accountability over the use. Judge Judd directed all parties involved to suit. Okay, the judging's kind of irrelevant, whatever. But let's check in on this. Let's read this piece. I don't know if this is part of the same piece. Actually, this is different. This is from something from 1984. It says Iran arms smuggler. It says a former Justice Department official may have been caught in the government's crackdown on people illegally selling arms and other military hardware to Iran. NBC News has learned the official could be among those indicted for helping to set up a parts pipeline. Jim Polk tonight on that investigation. So Stanley Ponninger, Mr. Chairman and members of the 2 committees. I am Stanley Ponninger. Ponninger testifying on Capitol Hill this week. Okay, so this is from Iran-Contra. This is his, I think, testimony from it. This nation's top law enforcement official for civil rights, the Nixon and Ford years, but now Ponninger is under investigation, facing possible indictment for violating the arms embargo against Iran by helping send military supplies to the Ayatollah Khomeini's government during the hostage crisis. Authorities say this man, Cyrus Hashami, was the Ayatollah's arms broker in New York. We're not going to read all of that, but either way, so this doesn't prove out the, I thought it might show the connection to the Process Church thing there. That's the quote tweet, I think, here, actually. So this is another tweet. She says, the more time that passes, the more I find Josh Zeman's exclusion of the Process Church, the Final Judgments program at Willowbrook, from his Cropsey documentary looks less like a sin of omission and more like a blatant misrepresentation of the facts. So this is Willowbrook, which I think she's done I think some crazy shit happened with Willowbrook from what I recall. Like I said, this is an institution for, I think it sounds like the mentally retarded, I believe. So surprise, surprise, crazy shit happened here. So feel free to go check that out more on your own. I was just kind of proving out those connections. But either way, you get the idea. I think you understand the tapestry here. I've introduced you to the threads, and now you can see the whole tapestry, and it makes sense. Perhaps. But with that, let's roll the chat, say our goodbyes, say more good mornings, more of the like. And then with that, we'll get out of here. I have a little bit of a funny outro for you guys might like. With that, let's roll the chat. Say some goodbyes, all that good stuff, and we'll get out of here. I'll see you guys tomorrow and tonight, 9:30 p.m. Eastern. Me and Austin, or dead. Call into the show. Shoot the shit with us. What else do we see? Good morning, Real John Doe. It says, you get files, and you get files, and you get files. Cubert says, this bitch has sucked a lot of dicks to position herself in the spot she's in, and she deserves the proper respect. Yeah, put some respect on Luna's name. Sydney. I see everyone was chiming in from Sydney Gottlieb. I got it. It took me a second, but I got it. Let's check in. What else we got? Martin Max says, dang, they be doing some fucked up shit to us for sure. They do. Good morning, John Black. It says, hey, dumpers, and Jose, you handsome beast. You beautiful bastard. You. Good to see you here. Good morning, user Chathead. Watching me on 2X. I'll talk a little slower just for you. Fire Pixie says, no mention of Philip Paskey. Yeah, we mentioned Philip Paskey. We definitely have. He was in that... He wasn't in the Norman tweet that we read, but he was in the that like Jake Shields thread connecting them all, like is essentially I at Chickenhawk thread. Good morning, or I say good morning to you, but hello, Gotcha. Says, thanks, Jose. I love reading, and since listening to you, my book collection has swelled immensely. Well, that is great to hear. It's always good to hear when people are reading more. Not much better. What else can you say other than like maybe improving someone's financial situation? What else could you say to help somebody? So that's always cool to hear people read. JMS, good morning. Says A Hunter by Andrew McDonald talks about Fed snuff films, but the protagonist is very racist. Hey, you had me already. You didn't have to keep selling it to me. Tom says, I have a hard time believing some of the brainwashing shit. It just feels so retarded. I don't know. I think if you really like kind of think about how the brain operates and like it's not that bizarre. I mean, think about all the subconscious shit that people do without even thinking. You know, people drive, commute every day. You just kind of slip that. I know that sounds silly, but now when you apply now I have you in my basement and I can beat the fuck out of you and rape you and do all sorts of crazy shit to you and applying those same principles, it's like, we might get some shit done here. I'm not obviously not advocating for it like this stuff. I'm just saying, you don't even have to apply trauma. You could see some of these things in real time. So you're like, I don't know. But yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah, it is a little bit hard. JC is the name of the group. The JCs. There you go. Tom says JC was a nobody in some young Democrats group or some shit. That's where the photos of politicians come from. Okay. Kubert says, I just want to make clear the general consensus is that Jose is about as ugly as a mud stick. Some people like mud sticks. Tom says, where's the place to get a fresh look at the mind control shit that's not a woman? I just can't listen. Oh, you're talking about Dana. I don't. So you're not even the mind control. So I'm assuming you're, unless you're talking about Representative Luna. I'm assuming you're not talking about that because that's I don't know. But even then, she's like, I don't really know. Who else would I recommend for mind control stuff? I don't know. Maybe somebody will come to my mind here in a minute. What else we got? Tom says, I bet, or Q. No, he's saying Q. I bet you fell out of the ugly tree and hit every branch on the way down. The way you should. I love how people running to my defense for my appearance. I appreciate it. Tom says the leap from basic subconscious actions to murder on command is Grand Canyon. I agree. But also like the difference between just like, gee whiz, I'm driving down my road and this weird, funny little thing happened and me taking you down to my basement and putting things places where they don't belong and being the absolute fuck out of you. I mean, the leap from that to that is also pretty Grand Canyon size. So like, but I get what you mean. Like, I get what you mean. Yeah, that doesn't necessarily mean that like, hey, this basic thing happens, and if you extrapolate, but there's a little bit of an implication, I'd say. But with that, let's go ahead and get on out of here. For those who want to support what I'm doing, leave a like, share, subscribe, comment, leave a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify. You can find the show at YouTube, Rumble, all the major audio podcatchers, and Twitter as well. On Twitter, that's at Tarot Gang Jose. Everywhere else, it's the No Way Jose podcast. And if you want to support the show the best way you can do that with money over at patreon.com/NoWayJose2020. See that in the top left-hand corner. QR code right there. Takes you to the same exact place as that URL I just gave you. And over there, you get the low level of $2. And you can pay more if you want. Get other perks, but the low level $2 unlocks most of the perks. You get access to early episodes. I do 1 to 2 of those per week. Keep 3 or 4 of them behind the paywall at any given time. Hell, I just checked the other day. I've been slacking. I need to start putting out more paywalled episodes to the public because I have like 5 behind there right now. So sorry, I'm slacking. But if you're a patron, enjoy the wealth. I also give you guys access to ad-free RSS feed, give you guys access to Telegram, to the pre-show, post-show, and video calls on me and Austin's weekly live call-in show, Already Dead, which is tonight, Tuesdays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. Also give a big shout out to the highest level of my Patreon is a big thank you for their support. I have my previous coach entire gang at Learn Tote, also at Brigade D's, at ZVCK, at _Invisible, at John Glebo, big fan of the show, Torment, at Wayne Tech, one cover kids, no free lunch, Jack, Mark Vestibule, Jacob Winter, Grab the Anarchy Podcast, and John Black, you beautiful bastard. I see you in the chat. And with that, let's go ahead and get on out of here. I see everyone. I love it. Everyone's rallying to my defense. Q talking shit on me. It says Q stole my bike. Q kicked my dog. Bastard. So everyone's turning on Q. You can't tell them I'm not handsome. They have eyes. They know what they see. All right. Obviously, I'm goofing. I don't really give a shit. With that, let's go ahead and get out of here. For our outro today, this right here is an answer. I frequently get asked, like, hey, what's it like, Jose? Like, what's it like living your life? Like, what is it like being a podcaster, a stay-at-home dad, a cat breeder, all of these things. What does it feel like? And right here, this nails it. See you guys tomorrow. Love you.